But last night you did have, it was more like yesterday afternoon mostly. You had UFC action. They are the only, really the only professional league that's still going. Even Bellator canceled. Bellator was going to do the UFC plan of having their card go on at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, but then they decided to pull the plug on it, and no Bellator. So the UFC was standing alone. Combat Sports was standing alone basically this weekend, and then it was just basically the UFC. Scott Coker did come out, and they said that they are going to pay all their fighters, they're going to pay all their staff and all that stuff for the planning of having that card go down, but it did not go down. So we were just left with the UFC. Now, as far as the card was concerned, yes, a lot of decisions basically up until we got to the top three fights. But this main card was a good main card. You had a lot of great opponents in here. Obviously, you got to say Nikita Krylov beat Johnny Walker by unanimous decision. Interesting for Johnny Walker, of course, stormed into the UFC about a year ago, where everybody was talking about this guy has the explosiveness, he has the craziness, he has the moves. People were even saying, maybe this is the guy who could beat John Jones. The guy was even bigger than John Jones. He then, of course, hurt himself doing the worm and had to get major shoulder surgery because he celebrated a win in a fight doing the worm. And so he lost his next fight to Corey Anderson, and now he has now lost two straight after he loses a decision fight. Took it well. I know Bisping had this post where he was talking about Johnny Walker being happy that he went the distance for the first time, and he thinks it's going to benefit him. But the Johnny Walker hype train, and that guy, listen, you watch Johnny Walker, that dude will impregnate your television. He used to be a male stripper, and you watch this guy dance to the ring. I mean, it is something. Don't have your wives watch, man. They will be hypnotized. I'm telling you, this Johnny Walker's something with them hips. But it wasn't enough. Krylov ended up getting the win yesterday. So Johnny Walker's a little bit back to the drawing board. Renato Moicano, he was the first one to put a win in the finish category yesterday as he beat Damir Hadzovic with a rear naked choke in the first round. Renato Moicano's an absolute badass. So he did it well for the hometown crowd. Brazil really got it going as far as this hometown crowd was concerned. These top three fights. Moicano got it going. First round submission by him, so really good win. I was very much intrigued by Gilbert Burns. This is Damian Maia. Gilbert Burns is a good fighter, man. He's a really, really good fighter. Trains here at Hard Knocks 365 under Henry Hooft. And his brother recently just got in the UFC after fighting in Titan for a while, Herbert Burns. But Gilbert's an absolute badass. And this is, one of those things where you're taking on a guy in Damian Maia. He's talked about what a weird fight this was going to be for himself, taking on a legend and icon to him in the submission game. But Gilbert has shown himself to be a really well-rounded fighter. He really is. And so he gets this fight against Damian Maia, and immediately we get into this position where Damian Maia's got his back and is looking for the submission, and that's no bueno if you're Gilbert Burns. Like, that is, you're looking and you're basically in a one-on-one match with Michael Jordan. You're Michael Jordan, and he basically crosses you up immediately and sticks a dagger right in your face. Like, it's got to be that kind of a start, but he really handled it well, got out of harm's way, pushed himself out of Damian Maia having top control, and he dropped him with this monster right hand. Now, he took a step back thinking that the ref would just call a walk-off knockout. He did not, and so he had to go in there and go finish the job with a barrage of shots, a little ground and pound. But Gilbert Burns right now is in a good way. I mean, he is right now riding a 5-fight win streak. He's looked absolutely great. He's beaten the likes of, Gunnar Nelson and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. He's got some good wins now. He has obviously the biggest one of his career where he beats number 5 ranked Damian Maia. That will put Gilbert Burns in the top 10 for sure. Had a good call out too. He said afterwards that he wanted to call out Colby Covington. I'd be very, very much into that fight and seeing that fight happen. I don't know what's going to happen with Colby. We haven't heard bleep from Colby since basically losing to Kamaru Usman. We haven't heard anything. I think he did he did do one interview where he with I think Helwani where he said he didn't have his jaw broken. I think Dustin Poirier revealed Dan Lambert had to have a talk with him because obviously there was a little bit of a rift throughout the lead up of Colby Covington's fight, and so they had to have a talk of what behavior was going to be like at the gym. But this is a fun fight. I mean, this is a fun fight. Gilbert was going on the path of that he wants to fight Colby Covington because of his filthy animals comments where he called Brazilians a bunch of filthy animals. So that'd be a fun fight. I would say, though, I think the benefit of doing that fight, though, would be if you could do it in Brazil. I think that would add an extra element to it. Now, it may have to be Chael Sonnen style where you have basically a lot of security following Colby Covington the entire fight week because I'm sure he's not popular there. And then you have the wonder with Colby. Like, Colby is one of these guys where he's been holding out for a lot of fights. His fight versus Kamaru Usman was a good fight. You know, if I'm Colby Covington, do I want to go fight a guy in Gilbert Burns who's just knocking on the top 10? Tough question. I don't know if I'm Colby Covington if I want that fight. And if you're Colby, there's a couple fights that could be. Obviously, does he fight any of the guys in American Top Team even in spite of the new memo that goes out? Is it a possibility that, let's say Jorge Masvidal doesn't beat Kamaru Usman? Does then Colby want to go fight Jorge Masvidal? Do those guys want to fight each other, the former friends? Does Dustin Poirier go up in weight? Something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of people who hate Colby Covington, so he's not like he's short on opponents, but that's a really good call out if you're Gilbert Burns. I think that one makes a lot of sense. You're gunning for a guy who's really high up there in the welterweight division. Obviously, the idea of fighting for the belt is probably quick in his mind. It's also a little bit awkward because they train at the same gym as well, so that's never easy if you're Gilbert Burns and you are coming from this place of being just outside the top 10. But there's a lot of good fights for Gilbert Burns, man. Like I know Chiesa also called out Colby Covington recently, so that's an interesting fight. Maybe Gilbert Burns and Michael Chiesa fight each other. That's a possibility. You could put that together. Leon Edwards, Tyron Woodley obviously tied up. Jorge Masvidal expects to fight for the title. Wonderboy Thompson, haven't heard much from him lately. Yeah, so I would say out of the guys in the top 10, like the guy who really does need a dance partner is Colby, but I don't know if Colby wants to dance. We don't know. We haven't heard much in that regard of what he wants to do for his future. So that's an interesting one. We get to the main event, and that was an interesting matchup to begin with. First of all, you had Kevin Lee coming into this fight, and Kevin Lee's just coming off that amazing knockout over Gregor Gillespie. A fight I thought he was going to lose. I haven't liked the way Kevin Lee has looked in a while. I mean, it's been one of those things where, the guy bursts onto the scene. Everybody loves him from the fact that he is very charismatic. He's got a great personality for the sport. And so a lot of the times the guys who have the best personalities usually are given the biggest benefit of the doubt from the media and thinking that he's going to turn it around. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. But the unfortunate thing with Kevin Lee is, since his loss to Tony Ferguson, and if you really include his loss to Tony Ferguson, he's 2-4 since 2017, since the end of 2017. And he's kind of run the gamut on everything a fighter will try to get their career back on track with the typical things of a fighter who's going through a lot of hiccups. He's missed weight twice. He's changed weight classes. His trainer unfortunately took his own life. And so he went through a big struggle with that of trying to find the right camp, trying to find the right place. Ended up at TriStar, seemingly a great choice with Faraz Sahabi and that whole camp. Johnny Walker went there too. Tough night for them. But it was one of those things where, he has run the gamut of what he's going to do and getting his career right. And it all really hasn't worked that great. He's got that, that monster knockout over Gregor Gillespie. But, even the Edson Barboza fight, the win that's a fight where he missed weight, and you got to look at that and be like, all right, well, that's a little bit of an asterisk to it. And same thing with Oliveira. Even if you would have beat Oliveira, you would have been like, all right, but he was 3.5 pounds overweight. I mean, that's a tough thing for a guy who's waffling between divisions and a guy that people probably thought was possibly the future of the welterweight division. Talked a huge game. He's great at talking. Kevin Lee is a guy who. I think a lot of people looked at him and saw the physique and saw the skill set. It doesn't seem like Kevin Lee has a lot of holes, but he is having trouble now putting an entire good fight together. And so if he doesn't do what he does to like Gregor Gillespie where he gets a fast knockout, then where does he go from there? And that seems to be the big problem because, he's getting choked out by Tony Ferguson, Rafael dos Anjos, and now Charles Oliveira. There's a glaring hole there when it comes to Kevin Lee. So I don't know what becomes of him. He was talking about afterwards. They did a little small media scrum, and it even slipped out that he's going to be gone for years. Not a year, not a while off. He says it's going to be a minute before you see us, and then he mentioned the term years. So I don't know what this means for Kevin Lee. I really don't. I don't know what you give him that even makes him look good. I don't know what the plan is. Because there's a lot of building up to do when it comes to that career. He's still now. The one thing you can say about Kevin Lee that he has going for him is that he is very young. I mean, he's 27 years old, and that is a lot of life still in front of you when you are a mixed martial artist. So a lot of this stuff came to him very, very fast. He's fighting for the interim title basically at 24 years old, and it has been a downward trend since then. But the one benefit you could really look at this and say is, one, he's a marketable guy. People will tune in to watch Kevin Lee. I mean, he's been basically in all of his fights other than UFC 244. He's been the main event since since before Tony Ferguson. So since his Michael Chiesa fight in June of 2017, he has main evented 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's fought on 7 cards, and he's main evented 6 of them. So the guy's a star, right? Like, the UFC looks at that guy and they say, this guy's marketable. We can get behind this. So he has that going for him. All right. That's a good thing if you're Kevin Lee, is that people they look upon you as people care to tune into you. If you're main eventing 6 out of 7 fights, people care about watching Kevin Lee. But the record is what it is, and the ways to get his career right is what it is. Like, there's not many other gamuts. Like, the typical things that fighters go through when they're searching for something are new weight class, new training camp, new training method, all these types of things. Like, there's not much else other than Kevin Lee basically taking a very long break and then coming back and then saying that he found something. And he has been a very active fighter for a while. He hasn't been taking a lot of breaks, and that's considering the fact that his trainer died, and he hasn't quite been the same since that happened. But the one thing you do have to like about Kevin Lee, he's a very accountable guy. He said up and down in the post fight that he was unprofessional and that he didn't show up the right way. That he showed up and did a poor weight cut. He thought the UFC was going to provide a nutritionist, and they didn't. So, and obviously fighting, he's fought under a couple of tough circumstances too, because I want to say the Tony Ferguson fight, that was the first event after the mass shooting in Las Vegas. So Kevin Lee's also been around a couple of weird things around his camp, as far as tragedies or national emergencies or world emergencies or pandemics. That's a pretty crazy book to write if you're Kevin Lee. So I know we've done a lot of focus on Kevin Lee. To give credit though, let's hit to the other side of this, and that's Charles Oliveira. This dude's an absolute monster. I mean, he has now won 7 straight fights via finish. He has an arsenal of ways to choke you out, and he's even got some TKOs and KOs in this run. He is sensational. I don't know who wants to fight him right now, because if you look at this lightweight division and where he stands, who's going to look at Charles Oliveira and be like, yeah, I want to fight that guy? Because he called afterwards, he's like, I want to fight the winner of Tony versus Khabib. Well, there's no way that's going to happen. You're not going to jump from 13 to beating to fighting for the belt. He just beat a top 10 guy in Kevin Lee, go to the top 10. Then what happens for him? I don't know. If you look at this run of beating Clay Guida, Jim Miller, David Timer, Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon, he did lose to Paul Felder, who I think would be the only other top 10 guy in this run. So I do think that Charles Oliveira, he's going to need a Tony Ferguson-like run to get to the title. It's going to take fighting somebody like a Poirier, Gaethje, somebody like that, Donald Cerrone maybe, if Donald Cerrone comes back. Somebody like that, he's going to need to really vault himself into that title picture. But I don't know who's going to want to fight him. Because he's kind of the guy where it's like, oh yeah, he's super dangerous. He's on this crazy win streak, and do fans tune into him? Like, is that going to get me a lot of eyeballs? That's a tough one. But I mean, if you're looking over the lightweight division right now, like who's on the roll of this guy? I mean, the list is Tony Ferguson, and maybe the way Justin Gaethje's been going lately, Dan Hooker hasn't even looked this dominant. So he's absolutely steamrolling fools. I don't remember what the record was that he put up last night. He was either already tied for most finishes in UFC with Donald Cerrone, or that win did tie him. So he's either one or two as far as finishes overall in UFC careers. He's a monster. So even though I don't think he's going to get close to the title shot now, he's certainly officially emerged as a contender, and I think is only a fight or two away from putting himself in that category. It's just a question of, all right, can you get these contenders to want to sign up to fight Charles Oliveira, because he's that kind of dangerous. He's that kind of dangerous, and he brings that kind of arsenal to the ring every single time he steps in there. But a great showing for him. Had to mean a lot for him to win in his country. Sucks that he wasn't able to do it in front of a lot of fans, but circumstances are what they are. And it was look, as much as I think Dana White is a little bit kooky for dying to keep these fights going, it was nice to have it yesterday. It was nice to have something to watch as far as UFC is concerned. But I do think it is advisable that they really pack this thing up for a little bit. I do. I mean, if you're telling me all these other leagues are, reluctantly or willingly closing up shop for everything. I mean, the damn Masters got postponed. Dana, the Masters, all right? They could ban everybody if they wanted to from there, other than the people participating. It would feel like the right move is that this is the last UFC for a while, because this is just one of those things where it doesn't even feel appropriate to have these guys travel. Here's the one thing. Like, a lot of the thing is here's the other thing with the keeping the combat sports going. Actually, we'll take a break. I'll tell you the other factor that I think is important when you're thinking about why we should probably put a pause on UFC and combat sports for a while. We'll be back after this.